Okay, so now let's take a look at scaling, pasting, and duplicating. Okay, so let's go ahead and add something to the canvas. I'll just go ahead and click on the button icon, and I'm going to select a button from the gallery here. Again, I think I'll stick with the orange parallel for consistency. I'll double click it, then I'll press OK. Now, the first thing we're going to look at here is scaling. I'm just going to take my snap to grid off here, and I'm going to go ahead and we'll look at three ways to scale this object. The first way we're going to look at is to go ahead and grab the corner of this bounding box, and of course you can grab anywhere on the panel, on the side, or on the bottom, but we're going to grab the corner and we're going to drag it out. As you can see here, you can size objects quite well. Oops, there we go. And actually they retain their quality quite well when you do that. So I'm going to go ahead here and press Ctrl Z to get back to our original shape there, and I've undid our steps, and we're going to take a look at another way how we can scale this button object. What we're going to do is we're going to actually double click on that button, and in the Attributes tab of the Properties dialog, we're going to take a look at the position area here. You'll notice that it has some different numbers and different settings for a variety of things, but included amongst them is the width and height. So if we've got 222 by 67, we can double the size of our button, for example, by going 444 by 134 and pressing OK. And you can see here our button has doubled in size. So that's the second way that we can scale an object. And the third way that we're going to look at here is the programmatic way. And we're just going to take a brief look at this for now, but basically we're going to cover it in depth later. For each object, we'll take a look at their individual actions. But for example, if we had this button on our canvas, if we double click here and we go into the Actions pane, this is just by way of example. And if you select the Add Action button here, and then actually from the menu, select Button, you can see that we have some options here to set the size of the button, and that would be the Set Size action. So let's go ahead and just take a look at it. And the Set Size action involves, actually you can go ahead here and click on the Click Here to learn more about this action button, incidentally, to see this, and it's a very handy reference, but we'll take a look at it. It's a pixel setting. So for example, we had ours set originally at 222 by 67, and we doubled it by dragging on it. Now we've put it back to the original size. Let's double it by using this action. So we'll go ahead and put in 444 by 134, which is double our original size. And here we're going to select our button. In this case, we've only got one button in our project, but if you had several, you would click on this drop-down menu and they would all be there available, and you can actually just go ahead and select the one that you want to treat. So we'll go ahead and press Finish on here, and then press OK, and we're going to set this in the center, and then we're going to press F5 to preview our project, and we'll see what happens here when we go ahead and click on preview our project. You can see here that it has doubled the size of our button. Here I'm going to put it back over here and just try that one more time. And that was done purely with that action. So that's the third way of scaling your objects that we're going to look at. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move this into the center, and we're going to take a look at another thing about scaling, and that's constraining the aspect. So for example, when we scale this button, if we go ahead and grab it like this and just pull it, that's not what we want. Usually what we want in a case like that is we want it to actually size proportionally to its original scale. So that's an aspect ratio. Basically, we're going to use a very simple method to demonstrate this. We're going to click on our button to select it. We're going to grab the corner edge here, but before we drag it, we're going to press Control and Shift and hold them down, and you'll see that that rectangle retains its aspect ratio, and wherever you let it go, it's going to go ahead and drop your object at that point, scaled to wherever you had it held. So that's kind of handy. And in this case, you can also go ahead and match objects to the grid and match objects to your page layout and things like that without having to worry about the object itself distorting. So it's a very handy way to go. And actually, we didn't look at this in the moving section, but here I'm just going to return this to approximately the original size. Pull it out here. But you can actually use a similar technique to, when you're dragging your objects, restrain them to a path. So for example, if I have my button sitting in the middle of the stage here, and I want to drag this button, and I want the button to stay exactly where it is on the x-axis, but I want it to move on the y-axis. Okay? So in other words, I want this button to stay on its path. I can actually, I'm going to click on that button to drag it, but then I'm going to hold down the Control and Shift key, and you can see here that it stays on that path. So it's snapped to its original path. So I can drag it over here and let it go, and I basically know that it's going to be in the same position along that axis that it was when it started, and it's just changed along the y-axis. So that's a very handy way of doing that. Okay, so let's take a look at or did I get mixed up there? I could have got the X and Y mixed up there, but basically you guys get the idea. If you click on an object to move it and hold down the Control and Shift key, you can hold it along the same path. Okay, so try that out and see how it works. Okay, so we're going to take a look here at we've got our scaling our objects, and we're going to take a look here at duplicating and pasting our objects. So if I press Control C to copy this object, or I go to Edit, Copy, I can copy this object, and when I press Control V or go to Edit, Paste, it's going to paste this object. Now what happens when you do this is the first instance will be pasted 10 pixels over and 10 pixels down. This is so you can see it. But every other instance, for example, if I press Control V again, will be pasted directly on top of that. So I just pressed it again and again and again, and I've got a big stack of buttons there. So basically that's just so you can see where your first instance is. And it's very handy when you're actually using this on the fly while you're designing something. And to duplicate an object, and this is really great because especially with buttons, if you're making a button bar, which you commonly would, you just go ahead and select it and press Control D. And you get a nice little duplication feature where it'll duplicate the object every 10 pixels down and to the right so that you can see where they all are, and it makes them easy to grab and move around and so forth. So I encourage you guys to try these things out. Of course, like I say, there's different ways to do this, and there's additional ways to do this, but we're just looking at these few basic ways to get us started so that we're able to manipulate objects, and as we move through the lessons, we'll feel comfortable working at this sort of thing. But I encourage you to go ahead and explore it and get into all the different ways that you can actually duplicate and paste objects and whatnot, not just one single technique. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the next lesson.